Final Fantasy XIII was a controversial game. It was a new take on the JRPG genre, which was odd for a direct entry Final Fantasy title. This caused many to debate that it was a backward step due to the various issues, such as the linear nature of the gameplay. With this in mind, Square-Enix introduced Final Fantasy XIII-2, a retake of the fresh, although imperfect new formula. Does Final Fantasy XIII-2 get it right this time, or is this an edition that's going to be long forgotten? Final Fantasy XIII-2 takes place 3 years after the events of the first game. Lightning is missing, and the only clue that leads to her whereabouts is in a dream of Sarah, in which she sees her sister and a man she's fighting named Caius in a world named Valhalla. With only her dreams to act as clues, and with the help of a new character Noel and Mog the Mogul from previous Final Fantasy games, together they must venture and travel through time as they figure out the mystery of Lightning's disappearance. Time travelling is one of the key elements in Final Fantasy XIII-2. Through the time portal called Historia Crux, players will be able to travel to different time periods. Players will venture through familiar locations such as Yasha's Massive, Oabar, Lightning's hometown, the New Bodham, and other beautiful locales within the game. With time travelling, players will be able to change some of the events at certain time periods and face the consequences of what we call the butterfly effect. What makes time travelling fun in Final Fantasy XIII-2 is the ability to repeat the events multiple times, and based on the action that the player does, new stuff will get unlocked. However, one wrong decision and at a certain time period will trigger an unfortunate ending that's called the paradox ending, in which there are several in the game, thus adding a lot of replay value. Similar to the first game, nothing has changed much in terms of the visuals. The character models are still as sharp as they were in Final Fantasy XIII. Voiceovers are still phenomenal, however there are a minority that show bad voice acting, especially the vendor called Chocolina. In terms of the pre-rendered scenes, expect it to be much less frequent. Almost all of the cutscenes in Final Fantasy XIII-2 are done via in-game cutscenes. Although they look a little edgy and rough, it's still a blast to watch, especially the beautiful exotic locales of the game. For players who enjoyed the new battle system that was introduced in the previous game, they'll be pleased to know it's back in XIII-2, with much faster fight scenes and new improvements. Instead of having multiple characters to use, players will only play as Sarah or Noel. To make the party full, players can choose from hundreds of monsters that are available to join the players. Simply defeat them in battle and then they'll randomly join you. While it's a disappointment that there are only 2 main characters in the game, the addition of using monsters in battles will get some time getting used to. Another addition to the battle system of Final Fantasy XIII-2 is the implementation of cinematic actions known as QuickTime events. While they're fun to do on the first few bosses, they become a tad boring after finding out they don't offer any challenge. Let's face it, what made the first game disappointing to the fans was the linear nature of the gameplay. This time in Final Fantasy XIII-2, Square Enix listened and implemented not so linear gameplay. Instead of doing one thing and then moving on to the next area to trigger the next part of the story, players will now have the choice to explore areas. They can take on side quests that vary from pickup quests to finding various items in the area in the different time periods, and of course hunting lots of enemies. Another feature that fans can expect in Final Fantasy XIII-2 is the addition of casinos. Players can take a break from the main storyline and play minigames such as Chocobo Racing and Casino Slot Machines. I find it disappointing that these are the only 2 minigames in the casino. However, Square Enix might add some later via DLC. Also, fans can look forward to the Colosseums, where the special monsters and monsters in the game are waiting. In the Colosseum, players will be able to fight monsters that they can recruit, and the ones Square Enix will release as downloadable content. While Final Fantasy XIII has some good things that are worth mentioning, there are bad ones that really hurt the game. One of the most disappointing aspects of the entire game is the story. Within the first few hours and time periods that the players have access to, they'll come to the conclusion right away that the story is interesting, thus they might play more to find out about Lightning's location. Alas, this will not last long, and as soon as you get to the middle section of the game, time travelling becomes very tedious, as it has many stories within that feel like filler in episodes that prolong the game. In addition to the bad story, another problem that plagues the game is the soundtrack. Typically, soundtracks of Final Fantasy games are very memorable, but in XIII-2, they're very forgettable. Final Fantasy XIII-2 is a huge improvement over its predecessor, while it does still have some flaws that hurt the game. Its non-linear gameplay makes playing a little less dull, however, the game does fall short in the areas of the story and the placement of tunes at unexpected moments. The time travelling in the game works well as it offers a lot of possible outcomes of the overall plot, thus giving everyone a reason to play certain events multiple times. For those who were disappointed with the game's predecessor, they can expect 13.2 to be a much better game, and players who avoided the first game should definitely pick this one up. We give Final Fantasy XIII-2 4 out of 5. For our full detailed review, please check out justpushstart.com. This is Oliver East, signing out.
Yes, let's change the future.
If you change the future...